Hi there, I'm Danny Henderson, spiritualtherapist.com. And tonight I'm bringing you an extremely beautiful being on our planet. And before I bring her on, I just want to give everybody out there a severe red warning. The biggest warning I think I've ever given on my small but mighty channel. The content we're going to be discussing is extremely graphic. It is extremely harrowing. It is violent. It is sexual. It is abusive, and it is horrendous. And this beautiful lady I'm about to bring on is going to share her story of her childhood, this little beautiful angel girl being born into a situation that she had no control over. If you have children, please do not allow them to listen to this graphic content. You have been warned with love, with love. And so now I welcome my beautiful new friend, Gloria Masters. Hello, darling.
Hello. How lovely to meet you, Danny.
It's so good to meet you too. I was telling you earlier that I saw you on another channel, I forget which one, and I just couldn't, I was a wreck myself because I am so empathizing and sympathizing with the journey that you've gone through. And then I saw you on my friend's channel, Mark Atwood, the British Mark Atwood from Cosmic Adventures in a Cosmic Suit. I love Mark. Hi, Mark. And then you emailed me and invited me to come to know you and to speak with you and to share your message and share your book and share your journey from hell to survival to healing, which is very much garnered towards you being a healed being and lifting your wings of love to help and guide others who have gone through sexual abuse as little ones and under 12. So Gloria, my darling, would you please just introduce yourself and start to share your story?
Oh, please. Thank you, Danny. Hey, fabulous audience out there. I'm Gloria. I'm a normal person who's had abnormal circumstances, to put it gently. So look, from the time I was born into a family where child sex transporting was the name of the game. And so I was trained by my paternal, my father's mother, and one of his sisters to be a child sex worker. I hope I'm allowed to say that. Mm-hmm. Now, what that meant was that from the very young age of 5 years of age, I was trained by them. They were paid by my father to teach me the art of seduction. Now, as a child, I didn't actually know what any of that was, really. It was just a concept beyond me, but that was just the beginning. I was sold to gangs. I was part of the Masonics monthly meetings. I was also transported out to several other groups. I was leased out of a nightclub in our red light district in Auckland, New Zealand, which is one of our biggest cities. And I was kept squirreled away on the top floor. And out of that room, men would pay a lot of money actually to abuse and, I don't know if I'm allowed to say rape me, but that's...
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gloria, it's just unthinkable what you've gone through, and thank you for that initial intro into what your life was. I do have a question, darling, if I may ask you. You said at the age of 5 you were being sexually groomed and habiticized, if that's even a word. I'm sorry, I'm losing my thoughts here slightly. I'm trying to be a grown-up as I speak to you and not be so rageful and scream and cry and F my head off at the tragedy. But do you have memories before 5 as being a child, like playing with toys, like being allowed to be somewhat of a little girl?
No, I don't consider I had a childhood. And one of your listeners, Debbie Street out there in New Zealand, will be watching, and
Hi, Debbie.
She knows me well. Hi, Debbie. She, well known to friends like Debbie, is that I am the child now. So for your audience out there, if you see me smiling and laughing and using humor, that's because I can. I'm free. I'm reclaiming and having that part of me grow and emerge. I guess that's not all though, Danny. I was left in my father's care from the age of 11 for 18 months when my parents separated. My mother was a complex narcissist, so there was no room for me or interest in me. The best I can say is that I was largely ignored and in the way. And so for my filthy pervert who liked under 12's father, that was such a gift. So for those 18 months I was left in his care, I nearly died, actually. I wrote a memoir about this, not to shock people, but actually to give people hope, because I did manage to emerge. I also star in well over 100 movies, pornographic movies. Back in those days, they were on the projector screen, so I used to hear the whirring of the tape. And they're out there. Police believe they could be in the United States. And also had several forced abortions on me by my grandmother. So look, the list of horror goes on. And for one small child and one small body to cope, I can see you gobsmacked there, Danny. That unfortunately, it's true. Fortunately, I made it through, and I always had a knowing that I was meant to come through this, and I think it's so that I can help others. So with humility and love, my real purpose, guys, is to shine light on this darkness through helping others.
It's unreal.
And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, Gloria, so many children who've come through that horrific trauma where they have to learn to disassociate. And as a therapist, I've met many people who suffer in different, levels to what you've gone through. And again, just a warning to everybody out there, I'm going to bring something up that is extremely graphic. From a beautiful client that I'm working with currently, amongst others who've suffered such horrific horrors as little girls and little boys. And this little girl, she's now a woman, she's almost 60. She was sodomized so many times, in her little tiny bottom, that she has horrific scar tissue. And again, we don't always realize, and again, guys, disclaimer, graphic warning, get your kids out of the room. If this is not for you, just move along. But there are people that need to understand what these children suffer, the physical pain, the physical atrocities that continue into adulthood and until they leave the planet. So this is not for, snowflakes, as it were, with all due respect to people who have their own trauma in other areas. And so my beautiful client, it still has so much scar tissue in her bottom that she's going through another phase of everything being inflamed, and she can't sit down, she can't stand up, she can't sleep, she can't eat, because if she eats, she has to go to the bathroom, she has to poop, she can't poop. This happened when she was a little one. So again, to highlight the trauma to the physical body that happens to children. Now, I don't need for you to go into any of the physical traumas that you may have unless you wish to, but you don't have to. That's why I'm using a client, an anonymous client, to, highlight, to sort of further help people understand what it is that these children, suffer and go through. If I may also, actually, I better not mention her name because everything is so censored. But so from 5 years old, it was your mother and your auntie who were basically sexualizing you, teaching you how to please men. Is that correct?
My father's mother, my grandmother.
My God, your grandmother and your mother. May I?
No, not my mother.
Sorry.
My grandmother and one of my aunties. So
Okay.
my father's, one of his sisters and his mother were tasked with that. Look, interestingly, Danny, of all the horror I suffered, the absolute worst of it, the thing that had the most impact on me was the psychological torture. And that happened in my father's care for the 18 months I was left in his house, abandoned in his house. So I became the child slave in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally, and I was treated that way. So can you imagine a child being made to be on all fours, be stripped naked, have a dog collar put around your neck, dragged around the house, and not be allowed to speak?
No.
And be called all sorts of names, starved, beaten, kicked, tied outside, and just completely tortured, belittled, dehumanized. That was worse for me than anything physical. So yes, of course, there's always physical damage, there's emotional damage, but I think for me, the psychological damage was by far and away what took me decades to emerge from, to the point where when I had my first child, and you would agree I'm an intelligent woman and I am nothing but truth, I was shocked I had a baby because I had been conditioned to believe I would only ever have dogs.
Oh, Gloria.
So that's the power of the psychological mind control, torture, conditioning, subjecting to abuse. It took me decades. And the interesting thing is, just to give your listeners and your audience some hope out there, I've turned it around and I now run a channel called Handing the Shame Back. And things like what Danny and I are doing now is exactly what we're doing. We're handing the shame back. And for all you beautiful survivors out there, every time this is spoken of or talked about or released from us, we are handing the shame back. So please join me in doing that. There's great power. And they never won, Danny, because I made it. I made it through.
You did.
And if you said to me, what's the real story? It's not about what I went through. The real story is the power of the human spirit to overcome.
Absolutely. And Gloria, you like just that claim there, handing the shame back. And again, I saw you on 2 previous broadcasts before you reached out to me. And the first time I heard that, I was just like bawling. I was like, yes, girl, yes, yes, because we have to do that as, adults now who've gone through abuse as adults, and children and little ones too, in all the ways, to actually be able to stand and love yourself enough to say, it wasn't me. It wasn't baby girl Gloria. There was not one thing Gloria Masters did that deserved that. And you're at a point where saying, no, you have it. You have it back. That is yours. That is yours to endure and they will
Yes.
endure, even if we
Yes.
think they're not getting. Is your dad dead? Is Granny dead? Is Auntie dead, or in jail, or banged up somewhere?
No, look, and I've tried to bring my case to court, but because it's so bizarre and so unusual, it's really hard for police. And now it's a very old historical case. I have tried in the last week to bring it back to the police, but unfortunately they can't see a way through. So no means a definite maybe, as we realise, if we're eternal optimists, of which I am. So, you know, a way will be made, and I just trust that I'm being protected at the moment by my angels, and the right thing will happen. So,
talking of angels, I want to go a little bit more back into childhood.
yes.
I've got some questions for you, but could you hold up your beautiful body of work, please? Your life's work, my darling, and tell us about it.
So this is my memoir. This has been out just over a year now, On Angel's Wings, My Flight from Trauma to Grace. Severe, triple, double, quadruple trigger warning here, Danny. It's not a pretty read. I haven't included everything that I went through, but I have included enough that people get the sense of what I went through. But again, it's a story of hope, because I overcame, and I'm here as living proof. They didn't win, guys.
Yeah.
The light came through.
It did. And somehow a way was made for you to come through that and survive that and retain, unfortunately, the information, but be able to, you know, there are so many people I see in my therapy sessions, they come and they present symptoms of something, but yet I know it's not the real reality, but they've disassociated and they've put something else in place of their actual trauma. And so as we go into therapy, then these things will very gently start to come out. But we do what we have to do to survive in those times, and disassociate and block. And so many of the children learn, and young people and adults too, they learn to leave their body. They leave the body, they make a way while the physical trauma, the onslaught is happening, because that's the only way that they can actually physically, mentally, emotionally survive in that moment. I wanted to ask you, darling, as a little girl, sexualized at 5 by grandmother on your dad's side and your auntie. I did know that, but my brain went to bubbles, unfortunately. I was trying not to cry, trying not to be a baby and be a grown-up and hold space for you. Sorry about that. Neighbors, like when you were living with your dad at 11 years old and he was treating you worse than a dog or a rat, neighbors, didn't anybody come to your rescue? Did you go to school? Did you have friends, darling? Like, what happened?
Look, when you're dealing, because he's a monster in my opinion, and in the book he's psychopath. Back in those days, so we're going back to late 60s, early 70s. That was a era where mind your own business. A man's family and his home is his domain. He's the boss. In fact, it took till the 80s before New Zealand police ever interfered in a domestic dispute in New Zealand, because it was a man's home, was his castle, and he was the king of the castle.
Well, utter bollocks though, right? What complete bollocks. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, that's the conditioning back then. It's not like that now. Every 5.5 minutes in our country, the police are called to a domestic dispute. But the point being, yes, there were neighbours around, but we also had in those days what we called the big 1/4 acre section. And the house was built so that the back deck was almost a surround. You couldn't see into the back deck. That's where I would be tied up and left. And so no one could actually see. And I certainly wasn't going to tell anyone. If I'd been badly beaten or brutalised and it was obvious, I was kept off school. So it was very simple. Look, the nuns and teachers knew something wasn't right. But again, the way we show it as children is through we can only do it through our behavior. They knew something was wrong, but of course you put an adult and a parent in front of a teacher. Guess who adults usually believe?
Always the adults.
Thank you.
Always.
Ask me if it's changed today.
In your opinion, has it changed today?
Oh, small, tiny, not enough that it's made a difference. This, we're not saying the word, but filthy perverts who like under 12s, that particular group are, they're on the rise. This is not, sorry people, but this is not going away. And that's why we need to start handing the shame back. We've got to start normalizing these conversations, which is why I partly reached out to you, Danny, because people who follow you and watch you, there's bound to be a certain percentage who have either experienced child sexual abuse or know someone who has. And we've got to give people permission to feel comfortable enough to speak. And that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah. Oh my God. Honestly, you're just a leader and a lover of life, and somebody that came in with such a strong heart, strong soul, strong spirit, to become a messenger, a leader. Not that you ever anticipated that, but to use the agony, the brutalization of your little baby being and all of those years of trauma and torment and being abused by so many people. I wish you could line them all up and name all the names. And, and I wish that more of us would come forward and just say, these are the names. These are the people. But we know that the people that do these kinds of things to our little ones are in the highest positions on our planet, the highest possible imaginable positions. They are infiltrated into every single system without exception. Without exception. So I wanted to ask you a bit about the monster that dared to give himself the title of being your father. Obviously, from his mother and his sister sexualizing you in the way they did, they too have obviously come from some kind of trauma background. Now, without naming clubs or situations or institutions, did you know anything about the monster who called himself your dad, his background, his growing up, or your auntie or your grandmother?
Not in terms of, childhood CSA abuse, not in terms of that, but I did get told that his sisters, when he was a child, had to wait on him hand and foot, could not sit in his special chair, could not eat before he had. And so he was seen as the prince of something. I think he must have been, told he was something really special. And the reality was he wasn't. What we do know is that for that to have happened, for him to have, because I wasn't a child to him, Danny, I was an object. So you don't waste money or time or love or energy on an object. An object is there to serve, and I was there to serve. I had no meaning to him apart from what I could procure for him in terms of money. So when you consider it, for him to have had that sort of pathology, it must have come from somewhere. And what we know is that, going back through the generations, it was highly likely, but I don't have proof. It's just conjecture.
It's interesting that there is this thing called the Little Prince syndrome, where a mother will raise her male child in that realm of you are this, you are that. And so the child from an early age and long-term life is programmed to truly believe this. Now, there may have been trauma in the womb. It's very likely that his mother herself, your grandmother, monster, who doesn't dare have permission to be called that, of course, in this reality you're in now. It was something you had no choice over. Now you have a choice. We always have a choice later.
Yeah.
So from what you're saying, there's absolutely no way that psychologically, sociopathically, psychopathically, that this woman did not have some kind of abuse herself or some kind of entrainment into this abusive mental lifestyle as being quite normal. And it was a way, obviously, for them to make money, to finance their living, their lives, to sell a little one, a little one such as you. Did you, when you were taken into the nightclub as a young teen, by this year, you've had so many years.
11-year-old. I wasn't a teenager.
Oh
11.
God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And these grown men, some fathers, husbands, teachers, police officers, judges, governors, politicians, cardinals, bishops, shirt-lifting turd burglars, whatever you want to call them. Sorry, I'm trying to calm down and be a grown-up here. They were all coming, paying to abuse your little tiny physique. And guys around the world, these are the men and the women that we have been told to look up to. And this is what they've done and what they do. Graphic warning, truth bombs, not very pretty ones, are they? But it's time, unfortunately, that there is more of an awakening in this horrific business industry that is worth trillions, not billions.
Do you know that human trafficking, and specifically human trafficking, is the biggest industry in the world?
Yeah.
So, of course, the money train is not going to stop. Look, I earned so much money for him, Danny. He got one of the first 4 Pontiacs imported into New Zealand in 1968.
On the back of his baby.
And he was a plumber. So, yeah, he made a lot of money. He sold a lot of movies. There was a lot done. I was leased out to gangs for weekends. I was, very, very terrified, actually. One particular incident springs to mind, and it was a weekend. I was leased to the gang for 24 hours. And in that particular space, it was an initiation, which means that a newly blooded gang member had to undergo an initiation ceremony in order to be, embedded into gang life, culture, and accepted. So here I am as the 11-year-old, there for the weekend. By the time my father came to collect me the following day, I was unrecognizable. I had been punched, kicked, beaten so severely you couldn't see my eyes. They had pulverized the shit out of me. They'd put me on the block for the time I was there. And they had done that because this was his initiation, if you like. My father's comment when he came to get me was, "Mate," to the gang leader, you need to be careful. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to stick up for me. No, these were his words. I'll never forget them. "Mate, you need to be careful. If you're gonna beat her up that badly, she won't look as good for you."
Oh.
And then I was taken back to my grandmother's house where they had to call a doctor. And I stayed there for weeks. It took weeks for the swelling, bruising, broken ribs, you can imagine. So, look, he made a lot of money, and that's how he did it. And I guess I'm here not to shock you guys watching, but to actually say, you know what? Look at the power of the human spirit. I got through, I overcame, and you can too. And Danny, what's really exciting is I'm just about to publish my next book, which is a guide for CSA survivors. So the ways I got through, the things I tried, the exercises I kind of did, and I've developed the book so that it's not from an expert, it's not from a psychological viewpoint, it's not from a clinical perspective. Frankly, it's from one survivor to another. This is what worked for me. Here, give it a go.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're just an angel of every level and imagination. And I cannot believe that you survived the things that you survived. And you said there was gang initiation, and you were put on the block. Now, I know it's harrowing. And again, guys watching, this is, graphic. This is upsetting. This is horrific. And, you have the opportunity to switch off, and you don't have to listen, but protect yourself and your children listening to this, please. Can you tell us, if you're able, what the block was?
Oh, sorry. I just assumed that was, no, you all right, Danny?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your big heart. So the block, it's just a term, but basically your hands and feet are tied to all four corners. So you're spread eagled out onto a block of wood. And then people line up and have a go.
So at 11, I mean, your little chest is barely developed. You've probably got no pubic hair, underarm hair. You haven't even started your periods. Your little childlike physique hasn't even started probably to take on curves that we normally would at that stage. And all these filthy, evil pervs were taking delight in abusing a little one. And you are not the first. And there have been multi-millions at this stage who have gone through something very, very similar, and allowed by their parents, their caregivers, their foster carers, their adoptive parents, their students from abroad. I mean, just every single, this is why we have to have these conversations, because people don't realize, and with everything else happening in the world and all the stresses and strains that everyone individually is going through right now, it is still so important to carry with love and care you, your life, your story, your survival, in order to help others, because things like this, it's end of days, my love. It is end of days for abusing our brothers and our sisters of all ages and stages on this planet. And it truly, truly is. And I wanted to go back to something you said about the nuns at school. So did you have to suffer a religious doctrine also in school?
Well, this is why I know I look healed now, and I am, thank heavens, but it's taken decades, Danny, and who you see before you was not the person I emerged at the age of 16. I didn't have to see my father anymore, so I never did. But my point is this, you're asking about the nuns, so I just want to give you guys, if I may, a bit of a picture or an image. Here I am, the good Catholic girl. I had to have a duality of focus, because on the one hand, I was living with my father until I was removed from his care. Now, the only reason I was removed from his care was because I'd come home early from school and he was in bed with another woman. Now, keep in mind, I've been conditioned and trained to be his mistress, his slave, his everything. And I went into shock, picked up my bag and ran all the way up to my mother's house, which was quite a way away. For the first time in her life, she looked at me in shock and wanted to know what had happened. As a result, the Archbishop, the Catholic Church, decreed it's not safe for me, a young, influential girl, to be left in that home with an adulterer.
Unreal. It's such
everything else is okay.
Yeah, everything else is fine, because they're all, a lot of them are doing it and have done it themselves. It is just absolutely I can't even laugh. It's just beyond imagination that this is the people that have been running our planet, my planet, your planet, Gloria, forever, and but again, you telling your story, that darling, as so many have gone through, like I told you, my beautiful client earlier, and the physical damage in her anus, that she's still suffering in pain today because of all the scar tissue. There are many that have these injuries, and there are many that will look at you, look at that beautiful face of yours, and you'll give them you'll give them the courage. They'll be like, there's someone out there, there's someone else out there who has lived my life. And your book is a blessing, and the new book coming out is also such a blessing to help people guide themselves through it. At this moment, would you be able to talk to the audience and gift them just some of the ways that you were able to self-soothe and self-regulate and talk yourself into some kind of compos mentis and back into your body, please?
You mean as a child or as an adult trying to recover from the trauma?
I would say both.
Okay. So, for the people out there who are also survivors, you're never alone. And there are many of us, and I believe you, and I stand beside you. So I just want everyone to know that. Those are the most powerful words, Danny, survivors can hear. I believe you. Because we're so shamed, we're so shut down, we're so silenced, partly through the shame we carry, but partly because society doesn't want to know. And if you were to ask me, what's the biggest, what's the most deafening sound out there about this, Danny? It's the silence around it. It's deafening. But look, here's a few things that helped me. So one of the things I found as a child were my beautiful little angels, and I first noticed them out of the corner of my eye as a small child. So for you, whether it is, it doesn't matter what your belief is, whether it's angels or God or the universe, no one judges. It all brings us back to source. If you can believe in something beyond you and reach out and hope, and we all do this, guys, we all do it when we're at our last hope, or we're just about to break, we say, please help me. Now that's that part of you that connects in with the deepest wisdom and love on the earth, and you're surrounded by it. And Danny teaches this all the time. The power within, the power you have and I have, is far greater than any evil out there. So what I'm talking about is maybe finding that light within and actually trusting yourself. So that's a second tip I would give. If you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling unsafe, if you're feeling anxious, just trust that and gently ask what you need from me. And it may be the answer comes, I probably just need to sit on the couch and eat potato chips and watch Netflix. Or I really need to see my bestie and just have a coffee. Or I just want to turn the phone off and just sit in stillness. So I think trusting your instinct and going within is something as survivors, we had to learn not to trust because we knew what was happening to us was so wrong, but it still kept happening. So we stopped trusting who we were. Does that make sense?
Completely. You're powerless. You have no power. There's nothing you can nothing you can do, not one single thing. And then even children who tell someone, they'll often end up being abused by that person.
Or we're shut down. And so I guess the third thing is this, that, the courage you have, you don't even realize you have, because look what you've managed to get through compared to the people around you who haven't. So already you've got this amazing courage, resilience, self-awareness that some don't even have. So maybe it's time to honor who you are, you beautiful soul, for what you already do have and what you already bring. I guess the final thing I would say, which could be a useful tip, is I'd love to say it's a Gloria one, but no, I'm stealing it from someone. So thank you, Perry Power out there. And he said this to me, and I love it. Please don't start sharing your story with just anyone. Choose to tell yourself 15 times first, and just hear me out. It may be that you write it out. It may be that you say it out loud. It may be you join an art class and that's what your art is, telling your story. It may be a martial arts group. It may be sculpting. It may be swimming. It may be getting some rocks and throwing them at a cliff. Doesn't matter, guys. Whatever you choose, start to do it and release it from your mind. This happened to me. This was never my fault. I was never responsible. This belongs to A, B, or C, or for some of us, more than one. Why? Because by the time you do come to share it with another person, even if they push back and say, really? Are you sure that happened? You're strong enough, or you're more resilient now to be able to counter that.
You know, as children, when we're going through violence of all natures, there's something in us that has a radar for other bad adults. Did you find that yourself when you were growing up? Yeah, just like in school. Or so do you remember, and do you have an example of that?
I remember when my father the monster first took me to the nightclub, and the boss at the time, the guy who owned the nightclub, part of his deal was to try me out first, with my father watching, of course, just to make you feel really well. And I just remember feeling, oh, this is evil, this is evil. Not what he was going to do, because I was used to that. But there was something really twisted about this man. And I just felt it in every fiber of my being. Instinctively, we know.
Yeah.
Sixth sense is real. Yeah.
Yeah, it really, really is. I just to give you a little side story myself.
Yeah.
I remember as a little one seeing this boy. I was 11, and you're so conscious. That's the other thing. It makes it worse, at the levels of abuse you went through. A normal, whatever normal is, but as a child who's not going through what you went through, your chest is starting to develop, and it's so painful. And then you're getting aches and pains, and your bones are great. It's just so much going, and you're so conscious. I was so conscious and shy. And I remember this boy coming towards me who was older, like maybe 5-6 years older, maybe 16, 17. And he looked like the Archangel Michael. He was so beautiful to look at. And I'm looking at him and I'm panicking, thinking, oh my God, I have to walk past him. And I'm all conscious of my budding little chest, and I'm terrified. And oh my God, Gloria, he got almost where I was, and all I could hear was the growling, screaming hounds of hell. The man was so evil, and he turned out to be a serial killer. And it's just amazing. We know. And I remember the certain kids in school that I knew they were being touched. I knew there was something just so wrong. And that's the amazing thing about little ones, that go through. And it turns out in some regards, and maybe you too, and I'd love you to say yes if it did or it didn't, but very often when people have gone through such horrific horrors such as you, that the intuition turns on a higher vibratory level. There are different things that happen to your psyche and your spiritual abilities. Would you say that happened to you? And can you give us an example?
Yes, look, I think so. But I also want to say that I think, and this is well known to survivors, Danny, we have this thing called hypervigilance. So at any time we can tell you who's behind us, how many, where the exit is, how close to the door we are, whether that person means us ill or harm. We are just hypervigilant. So for us, we carry the biggest weight of post-traumatic stress you'll ever see in the world. Vietnam vets and war vets have nothing on us. And there's some research around that. But yes, so what happens is, because you have to be able to hear, in my case, a pin drop, because I had to get ready to run and hide as quickly and easily as I could at any time. No doubt at all, those abilities were highly developed. But what does happen is the part of the brain, when it comes to learning, is shut down. So it's really hard for us, and it was hard for me. I did manage to scrape through at school because that part of the brain shut down. But in terms of sensing, spotting, noticing danger, or people around that hypervigilance, you would have given me a gold.
Your mother, your biological mother, when she finally had the time for you, were you able to tell her everything that had happened and was happening?
Well, it's interesting, because although they got me out of the house at 12 and a half, and I had the 18 months, the only girl in that house, nearly killed me. I attempted to end my own life 3 times as a child, which people find abhorrent, but it's true. However, there's a twist to the tale, and this might just confirm your instinct already, Danny, about my mother. She then decided that the priest had said, oh no, you've got to keep sending her back to him every second weekend and for the school holidays. So when I talked earlier about the duality of focus, I had to, for 12 days, be the good Catholic girl, do everything my mother said, and carry on. For the other 2 days, I had to become the best child, performing slave, use your imagination, audience, for gangs, clubs, filming, leased wherever, transported everywhere for those 2 days in school holidays. So the child that left on the Friday night was never the same child that went home on the Sunday night. And somehow I had to find the courage. And that was one of my biggest challenges over those remaining 4.5 years, was transitioning from the Madonna to the other.
My goodness me. I feel terrible asking these questions, but I think it's important, not to, we have this opportunity to share time together and to help other people who have suffered in similar ways to you. When you were being filmed in the worst possible imaginable scenarios that no child should ever be filmed, were there other children there too?
Yes, yeah. So this filming didn't begin at the age of 11. I was filmed and had pictures taken from the age of 4.5. And if I showed you pictures of me now at 11, at the age of 11, you would say, oh my gosh, I look like I'm doing the work that I was forced to do without saying the words. The transporting I was forced to do, I look like I really was into that and wanting that. So, there were other children, there were other adults, there were women involved. There's a myth out there, Danny, that women are not part of this. Can we please explode that myth? Women abuse a lot more than people want to realise or will believe, but they do. I work with a lot of male survivors who were sexually abused by women and women in power. So it's not just a male thing.
No.
So, sometimes it would just be me. It would be child with child. Other times it would be me going around a group of men. Other times it would be me with an adult woman and an adult man. So, it just depended on what people wanted. But what I learned to do to survive was I learned to read people. And I think this goes back maybe a little bit to your question about, did you develop other abilities? I was really good at reading people, and I sensed who the most gentler natured, what are we calling them?
Abusers. Filthy
Abusers.
perverts.
Who like under 12s. I learned to work out who the gentlest one was, and I would sidle up to that person and make sure that I would do whatever he or she wanted if he or she would be a bit softer with me, not so vicious. Because you got to remember, for some of these people, although they were doing it and they were loving what they were doing, they were also feeling bad for doing it. So in order to have that duality or that oxymoron within themselves, they were angry. So guess who bore the brunt of that? Me. So sometimes the assaults, the abuse was the erotic stuff was nothing compared to the physical anger that the abuse that went with it. But out of the three, it's a psychological torture I come back to every time. That was what did the most damage, in my humble opinion.
Oh, darling, darling, darling. Wow. So go ahead.
But you know what, Danny? I'm glad I made it through, and I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah.
I'm grateful I'm here.
Oh, Gloria, we're so grateful that you're here and that you've had the courage. I mean, the courage it's taken to create this body of work, your life in a book, laid bare in every imaginable way, and use of that word. And just to be able to share it so somebody reads it and says, oh my God, that's me, or that happened to me, or I know this, and this lady, Gloria Masters, there's a couple of things I want to say. One of them is one thing I've known my whole life about other humans and other kinds of humans, that there is a certain being, let's say a woman, and she has a certain frequency to her voice. She has certain tones, harmonic, vibratory resonance. And she generally has these beautiful kind of fuller cheeks, but this gentle, soft demeanor. And you have all of that. And I recognize that as an angelic signature frequency with physical.
Really?
Yes, darling, with physical markers. Yeah. And interesting that you, as a tiny one, also were conscious and visually seeing the angelic realm, angelic beings. So, and that's wonderful, because I know there are so many little ones that don't ever see anyone, Gloria. They don't ever feel or know. And some of them are so traumatized, they're screaming, praying, and begging for anything. And unfortunately, some of them pull in darker entities alongside them, unfortunately. We're not going to say names, of course, but do you have any awareness of any of the evil adults ever having been caught, arrested, strung up, castrated? I mean, I could pick a few more deserved punishments in my own mind, but is that a situation without naming names?
Not the people that abused me.
How long?
So for my father and his peer group, most of them have passed. But there are other younger, including, my brother and his friends, who are 4.5 years older than me, who are still walking around today. So that's not completely over, but I can't talk about that legally. But, I believe truth will out, and I believe there's power in truth, and that for me to even call this book On Angel's Wings, I've been guided, Denny. I'm guided. I'm just a messenger, really. I'm not.
Well,
get me off the pedestal. I'm just a messenger.
but is that not what we are told is the definition of what an actual angel is? An angel is a literal messenger.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Did
Wow,
not know
girl.
that.
Yeah, true story, true story.
Yeah. You know what I'd love to do, Danny, and I wish there was a way. I keep getting pushed back in our country. Media don't want to know. They want me to not talk about this. I'd love to do a TED talk because I don't think there's many people in the world that have gone through what I have gone through and come out like me.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's a competition. I'm just saying, let's share this. Let's share the light. You know, let's light each other's candles and help. There's so many of us out there, but I keep getting pushed back in my country, and I don't know. I just wish there was some way I could get on bigger platforms, Danny, and really help other people, because I get it. I've been there, and you know, we need to help our beautiful little survivors.
Yeah, we do.
It's hard for people to find their voice.
Yeah. Well, I know for a fact that there will be people that see our broadcast together that do have access to. It's so interesting. It's so funny. You know, years ago, it was like we had to get on Hay House. Hay House was the yardstick, you know, and then it was Hay House if you were going to be someone. And then it was a TED talk. And then TEDx came along and oh, it's TEDx, is it TED talk? It's like, is it TEDx? That's not as good as a TED talk. And, you know, again, you know, there's always things changing, platforms shifting. But I do know that there's certain people that will see this in our conversation that will potentially reach out and support you more. And I'm always saying to people, you know, I did a broadcast with some children in Uganda who live in a slum to raise some funds because they've got no clean water and they're starving basically to death at the moment for all kinds of different reasons. And so, you know, using my platform to shine a light and saying to others, guys, like, come on, let's do this. This is why if we're lucky enough to have a platform, then I feel this is our duty, you know, to shine a light, you know, through people like you and bring you forward more and help and support you, especially as you're getting shut down where you live, you know. But it's like we're saying this phrase on so many levels now across the world for many different reasons. And the phrase is, nothing will stop what's coming. And in the same regard, nothing will stop what's happening, because there is a disclosure on our planet that is shining the light on every imaginable condition, whether it's abuse, transporting, angelic, other species from other planets, other technologies that have been held. Nothing at all is being shut away and hidden anymore. And that, you know, they can't kill us all. And there's a lot more of us than there are of them, you know, and that's a fact, you know, that's a fact all day long, all day and all night. I did want to offer a little something to some of the people that will see this in terms of a self-soothing or a self-regulating, because obviously listening to your story, you know, not everybody has suffered at the level you have, but your story will clearly trigger emotions and sadness and rage and upset in others. And it is such a beautiful thing for us to imagine taking our inner child, that little boy or that little girl, onto our lap, and imagine wrapping our arms around that babe, and just imagine rocking with that little one and just telling that little one, I love you, you are safe, I have always been with you, look how strong, look how powerful, look how special, how beautiful, how clever. All of the things that we craved someone to tell us, but they didn't. And so where we are now as the adults we screamed out for to help us, we are those adults. And so we can do the best to self-soothe and self-regulate and reach out to you, Gloria Masters. and get your book and receive your guidance, because this clearly is your mission on the planet, isn't it?
And so beautiful. Thank you for that. It's really powerful, Danny. You know, for those of us within a child's that weren't valued and we weren't seen for the beautiful little souls we were, you know, that I don't think, unless you've suffered some sort of trauma, I don't think you realize quite how hard it is to find a way back to self and reclaim who we really are. And I guess because I didn't have a living adult who would help me, that's why my connection with my angels is so powerful, because they were there and they did help me. And someone recently interviewed me, Danny, and asked, "Oh, don't you find that, you know, people get put off by you saying or talking about your angels?" Well, I couldn't help it. I said, "Go hard. I don't really care." They helped me. I'm not going to pretend that didn't happen. And I'm not trying to ram that down anybody's throat. It's just a fact. No living person would come to my aid. They did.
Yeah.
So very grateful and very humbled. And look, if one other person gets helped or feels some measure of support, you know, that isn't that beautiful? That just sends shivers down my spine.
Yeah.
So on the channel, Danny, Handing the Shame Back, which is on YouTube, every week I do an interview with a survivor, and themes emerge from that, so that other survivors that watch might get a little tidbit or two out of, oh my gosh, so that person tried that and that worked for them. I also put up a blog, so I write every week. And my blog that's just gone up this week is on flashbacks. Why? Because every survivor on the planet, we know what flashbacks are. So what I do is identify what they are, talk about how they impacted me and ways we can manage them. So that's on the channel every week. I also put up tips for supporting survivors, like for some of our loved ones and friends. They don't know what to say and they don't know what to do. So I just offer some ideas around, hey, here's a tip for this week. You know, so there's lots of resource every week on the channel, and it's just 100% dedicated to survivors of child sexual abuse. Why? Because it should be. And that's, I can only talk to what I know. So
Yeah.
It's free. It doesn't cost anybody anything, but I just love to help. And yeah.
Do you find that in doing the loving support and gifting of your time and your experience, do you find that in that, not that you're looking for a matching healing, but at some level there is also a healing within you that occurs?
I think what happens is it reminds me, and it's reflective. And I'm never going to stop learning until the day I die. This healing will always continue, because it formed a very large part of my childhood and adolescence. And so, you know, I think I'm always learning off everybody, and the healing carries on. But I'm also really excited about life and feel joyful and very blessed, actually. Very blessed in my life.
Oh my gosh, very blessed
Yeah.
indeed. When you were growing up, again, just to try and help people understand kind of the psychological ways that little ones endure, but they find things. Sometimes they find things, they find ways to cope, to pull on, to draw on something. Were you ever given the opportunity to find out what you liked to do, whether it was drawing or dancing or watching a show, or did you have a toy you loved? Was there anything like that that gave you respite from the trauma?
I used to run I loved to run, because if I was away from the house, I couldn't be hurt. So I loved running, and I loved physical activity, and I still do. Not running. The mind says yes, the body says fuck. but so I love things like having control over my body through movement, like yoga and hiking, and that sort of thing is really wonderful for me. And the other thing I loved was netball. Netball gave me such a gift. I would lie awake at night and imagine myself shooting those goals. So things like that, yeah. And look, for all of us, one size doesn't fit all, Danny. And for you beautiful survivors out there, it doesn't matter what it is. But if it lights and lifts you, grab it and don't let go. Because it's for you. What's for you will find you.
Oh, I love that. What is for you will find you. Moving forward a little into your young adult relationships, and you clearly said you didn't share this with anybody, you kept it very quiet. But as you then escaped the non-father at 16, when you started moving into relationships with boys, for example, assuming, what was that like for you? Like, did you tell them what happened to you? What kind of relationships did you find yourself forming after all that trauma?
Think grade A effing disaster. I was so damaged. My template was hurt me, use me, abuse me, ignore me, treat me like shit. I'll do everything. You're the boss. I'm the slave. So my whole conditioning had been that. It was highly unlikely I would attract loving, supporting, reciprocity in any sort of intimate relationship. So I didn't. I just didn't. I didn't like myself. I didn't know who I was. The biggest damage to me wasn't alcohol or drugs, Danny. It was the false persona I'd put on. So I had to spend decades unraveling all of that. And who am I if I'm not fit for purpose? Who am I if I've never had a need met because I was too scared to ever put my needs first? Who am I if no one saw anything in me apart from using me? Who am I? And so that was really difficult. And I'm a slow learner, me. So I married not one, but two people who respectfully did not see me and did not value me. So, I think now I'm there. Now I'm healed enough to spot rubbish from a distance, and I have no tolerance. But I was very damaged and very, very false and forced and rubbish. Always a good person, but always put everybody else first, always at the expense of myself. And it took years and years. And in fact, the memories didn't really come to me strongly until I was a mother myself. So I blocked it. And you talked earlier in the show about dissociation. Dissociation is well known to us survivors. It's actually our best friend. And the reason I say that is because we can't stay in our body while all this is happening. It's too much for our young minds. So our mind leaps in, thank you, mind, and protects us by removing us. That's what that is. My mind dissociated for many years, and when it finally hit, whoa, they say it hits when we're ready to deal. But that was tough. Those were tough years, those recall years.
And that's again,
I can't even remember what your question. Oh, yeah, it was about young relationships. Yeah, so no, I was hopeless. I couldn't have pulled in a good person. If you'd lined up good people, I would have kicked them to the ground to reach the idiots. Because it's I had no self-value.
Yeah, it's very typical. And again, a lot of people that have gone through your trauma, they end up on drugs, in prostitution, dead, alcoholic, so many horrific people themselves, because they don't know how to be anything other than what was shown and modeled to them and through their physicalness and their spirituality. Oh my goodness me. So I think it was on Mark Atwood's channel when I saw you, that you mentioned the color of your beautiful hair.
Okay.
And why it's the color it is from a younger age.
Yes, so I had white hair in my early 30s, and the reason I kept dyeing it and kept dyeing it, and in the end, thank you COVID, I gave in because we were all in lockdown. But yeah, look, lots of impact, lots of trauma, and what we do as survivors is maladapt, and my maladaptation was that false self. So my biggest hurdle was recovering and reclaiming me. Who am I without the mask? For some of the amazing survivors out there, it may have been drugs, it may have been alcohol, it could have been sex addiction, food addiction. We all know the pain of it because we're trying to escape the truth of what happened. The reason I couldn't embrace drugs was because from a very young age, I was drugged so strongly and powerfully that it terrified me, Danny. So drugs weren't for me, but not judging anyone who's used that. It just couldn't be something for me. I was too scared. I was too scared.
Yeah. And nobody knowingly, willingly really wants to go into a drug taking, drinking out of the mind, blacking out, sexual addiction, trauma state. But the people such as yourself who've gone through these dreadful layers and levels of trauma, they find something that helps them blot, cope, exist, live, breathe. And, it's so easy. People are so cruel, judging, somebody on the street, for example, without knowing one thing about what that man or that woman or that young person has gone through. It's very easy to point fingers and sit there, drinking our coffee in a coffee shop and seeing people walking by who look a bit weird or look like a meth addict, or we don't know what that beloved has gone through. We just don't know.
Exactly. You're so right, Danny. Totally agree.
Yeah. But again, back to your work. And I mean, it's interesting to me, I'm hearing myself saying back to your work. It doesn't befit, it doesn't fit saying your work. It's like your legacy, your life, living through the return to love, to reclaiming you, and then gifting all of that out to all of us. It's just remarkable. I mean, you are a tower, it's a head and shoulders above so many people on the planet as a single being, such a bright light, such a lover, a giver, a bringer of hope. You are a route through, you are the journey to healing for a lot of people that don't even know it yet. It's all true, boo. It's all true. It's all true. Is there anything else that at this stage, because I'm pretty sure that you and I will be having another conversation as time goes on, and when is your next your workbook, the self-guide, the self-help piece that you're bringing out, when is that coming out?
I'm hoping within the next 8 weeks to have that published, so we'll stay in touch. It's called Flight Path to Healing. I'm really excited about this book, and it's a guide for CSA survivors. And what I love about it is that, it's a guide, so all the way through these guided exercises and things to try. And then, of course, being individuals, Danny, people will take bits and pieces from each section, create their own flight path, and at the very end they get a passport. So they've boarded the plane. And I'm very grateful to have been able to use this to give back. So yeah, this is my purpose. This is why I'm alive. And you know, one day I hope to be across the world and to meet with you and to
I'd
meet
love
with other beautiful people who have offered to share the story, because you know there's a lot of us across the world who have suffered.
Definitely. And, you know, for me, what I see happening is in this time of disclosure on every level, in every imaginable situation, that the healing and the healers and the teachers and the leaders of love will be stepping forward. People like yourself, Gloria Masters, and people will come and they will listen to you speak, and they will listen to your story, your lecture, your help, your guidance, and they will be there. And it will be a mass healing, a mass gathering of other people who felt like misfits and broken nothings, worthless, but coming together and finding the tribe of healing together. This is the world that we are creating in the moment. It's already started, and we're in it, and we're riding the wave, and nothing will stop this love revolution for the healing of all of us. It's the truth.
Thank you, Danny. That's beautiful.
And I know you know it, girl. You know it in your heart.
It's beautiful.
It's part of your purpose. Yeah, it's part of, we're going to be hearing about you, reading about you, getting excited to listen to you, watching your broadcasts, and just saying Gloria Masters is a brave one that stood up and stood out and said, no more, no more, not on my watch.
Yeah. Well, we can but hope. And look, I'm just a normal person, but I'm just an ordinary person who's had an extraordinary time. So I'm just like everybody else. I'm no better than, no less than. I'm just a person who's had an extraordinary experience, and I'm turning it around to help others.
And handing back the shame where it belongs.
Handing the shame back. So people can go on gloriamasters.com and they can look at handing the shame back, because that's what we're doing. And Danny, wow, how powerful today. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for having me.
My honor. And I'm so glad you reached out to me. So glad you asked me. And it's my pleasure, my honor, and my love to you, my deep gratitude to you. And that beautiful little baby girl inside of you, as you bring her through more and more healing and share her with others, and your adult self now, and you are a wondrous being. Sorry, I had you on full speaker and started yakking, but you are, you know, what we look up to. You're the kind of person that I myself will say, that right there, this lady, she's a leader. She's an absolute leader of self first and leader of others. Could you hold up your beautiful book one more time and tell us where we can get it, please?
Okay. Now, just for everyone to know, it's in Kindle version and Audible, because apparently people like listening to my voice. My kids might have an issue with that, but anyway. So it's on Audible, Kindle, and paperback. So you can go to gloriamasters.com and order it through there on Angel's Wings. Danny will love the Angel's Wings. Now, that image is of an 11-year-old. You can see the light coming down and the wings surrounding her, if you look at the bottom. And it's my flight from trauma to grace, because that's what happened.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Could you turn the book around so we can see the back cover? Excellent. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Is that you down there in the corner, I would hope?
Yeah, that was me till I gave in, and COVID decided to knock at the door, and I thought, I'm going to give in and go white. Well,
you're a very beautiful lady. You know, not everyone can get away with that look.
Hey, you know what? It's just the face, isn't it? It's what we do on the inside. I think that comes through, isn't it?
Yeah, you can be the best looking person visually, facially, physically, but if you don't shine that light, we can all feel it. Us humans, we're so clever, we're so intuitive, we're so knowing. You can always feel if someone doesn't have, or they're not what they say they are. But you resonate on every level, all of that beauty and love that many of us aspire to. Oh, Gloria Masters, let me just hand back to you for final words or final thoughts before we close.
Go well, beautiful people out there. You're never alone. And even if you feel you are, you've got unseen angels and guides and beautiful, beautiful energy around you that you can tap into. Love to all of you, especially you fantastic survivors of child sexual abuse. I see you. I believe you. I stand with you.
Oh, that's so powerful. I believe you. I see you. I love you. I stand with you. That's such a beautiful message that many will hear and receive. Well, darling, an honor and a joy, and I can't wait for us to play together again when you come forward with your next, legacy for us to enjoy. And until then, Gloria Masters, I send you my love. And to you, beautiful people out there.
Back at you.
Oh, I receive it. I receive it. And to you, beautiful people out there, I send you my love, and I will see you soon. Thank you, Gloria.